Also in our nation's capital, the House of Representatives passed the Respect for Marriage Act today with bipartisan support. The final vote was 258 to 169, with one member voting present. 39 Republicans crossed the aisle to vote in favor of the bill. The bill will codify federal protection for marriages of same-sex and interracial couples across the country. President Biden has said that he will sign the bill into law.
At last, we have history in the making, but not only are we on the right side of history, we're on the right side of the future, expanding freedom in America.
This bill comes after the Supreme Court's June decision that overturned the federal right to an abortion. That ruling included a concurring opinion from Justice Clarence Thomas that suggested same-sex marriage could also be repealed. And here's how our Heartland lawmakers voted. Nebraska Representative Don Bacon voted in support, Flood and Smith against. Iowa Representatives Axney, Hinson, and Miller-Meeks voted in support. Representative Feenstra against. In last week's vote in the Senate, Senator Deb Fischer voted against, and Senator Ben Sasse did not take a vote. And Iowa Senator Joni Ernst voted for, Grassley against.
Also today, the House of Representatives passed sweeping legislation to authorize $858 billion in national defense funding. The measure would also rescind the U.S. military's COVID vaccine mandate. It passed with wide bipartisan support. The Senate must now approve the bill before President Biden can sign it into law.